Hi, this is Carole Baskin, founder and CEO of Big Cat Rescue, and today is Cat Chat. Today our guest is Lynda Sugasa. She is the founder and CEO, president. What are you?
Founder and executive director.
Executive director of Safe Haven Rescue Zoo. And we have a page up for the show notes that will have a link to your website and also the great photos that you sent me. So the reason I wanted to talk to you
Great.
today on the show is because you really started a sanctuary the right way. People ask me all the time, how do you start a sanctuary? Most people go about it wrong, like I did. But you really did it the right way because you went someplace, you volunteered, you got the land, you made sure that you were able to finance it, and you were sure from, well, I think you'll tell me, but I think you really went about it in a responsible manner. And so what I'd love for you to share with everybody is first how you got started and how long ago that was that I knew you. I'm thinking it was back in the 90s that you were coming out here to the
Long
sanctuary.
time.
Do you
Yeah,
remember?
it's been a long time. It was actually, yeah, sure. It was, I would say I started coming out to you between, I'd say 1996 and 1998.
Wow.
And at that time, I had started working with wildlife for native wildlife in the Midwest. And we were founded pretty much as a rehabilitation center that would rehabilitate several hundred animals per year for release back to the wild. And at the same time, I would come down and volunteer at Big Cat Rescue. And as we continued to grow, we started getting the placement requests. The first one being a bobcat that was confiscated from an apartment house by the Department of Natural Resources, and that part started to grow. And concurrently, volunteering at Big Cat Rescue, you could see what was required to start a sanctuary. And so that was a
Which
really
really
good lesson
shows
for me. And then yeah,
it shows how crazy you are that you saw how hard it was and you still did it.
yes, but I didn't plan on taking that many at once. That part's kind of grown at a slower pace, which I think was good. It was good to see, I think where you can make a mistake of just growing too fast and not being ready for it.
Yes. So when you first started, what was your job then? What kind of background did you have?
I worked in the corporate flight attendant, actually. I flew all over the world, and in between, I was trying to do the rehabilitation, and I had just decided that that's really what I wanted to do. And so I stopped working with the flight department, and then I focused on growing Safe Haven at the time. I took a lot of workshops with IWRC, International Rehabilitative, I'm trying to think,
I can never remember that
International
acronym.
Wildlife Rehabilitative. Yeah, it's a long name, but in essence, it's basically classes on rehab and different species to work with, and everything that encompasses doing whatever you need to do in a rehab environment. And so I just kept growing on that and taking workshops, and then eventually even taking the chemical immobilization classes and their advanced classes, and then putting it to use.
Where were you living when you started?
In Marengo, Illinois, which is the area of the northwest suburbs of northern Illinois, maybe about 45 minutes from the Wisconsin border. And so we pretty much would, take care of orphan baby squirrels and baby opossums and foxes and all kinds of wildlife. And at the same time, we continue to get more of the placement requests for those that had been illegally owned, abandoned, or confiscated. And then as that continued to grow, we decided that we needed more land. We only had 5 acres where we were, and that's fine for just doing rehab work because it's only on an interim basis. But then, to be able to accommodate more and more of those that were confiscated, we needed more space. And so we made the move to northern Nevada, and now we have 160 acres. And what's really exciting is we just purchased the adjoining 160 acres, so now Safe Haven has 320 acres for the
Oh,
facility.
wow. That is fabulous. When I talked to you like a week or so ago, you were like right on the edge
Yeah,
of getting closed. So I'm so glad that happened.
right, right. And then, we are on solar power out here.
Oh, you're kidding
And
me.
although that's worked really well.
All
No, we've been
solar?
on solar, but the problem is, yeah, well, that sounds great. We are a green facility, as they like to say, but unfortunately, with the rate of growth, that power has not been able to keep up with our needs. And so we doubled the solar system, we doubled the inverter system, and it still is not enough. So what we've done now is through grants, we are now going to bring in power, get connected to the grid, which is really almost 2 miles from our location. So it's a big expense, and we'll still stay on solar, we'll still sell back, but we'll have the electric as a backup for the growth.
Wow. That just strikes me as such a huge impediment, and yet you've managed to make it work so far, and sounds like you're well on your way to fixing the problem.
Well, I know, and if you look at how remote we are, I think the infrastructure has been the biggest challenge out here, and the most important to have taken care of.
How far are you from a major city?
I would say it's probably about a 30-minute drive, which really isn't all that bad. Being remote isn't all that bad in that we don't have any neighbors. I mean, the closest ranch is about a mile away from here. And so being unincorporated, we don't have the threat of that other sanctuaries sometimes have with, development coming in and that type of thing. We're pretty isolated. And so I think for the sake of the sanctuary, that's a real benefit.
How far are you from Las Vegas?
8 hours.
Oh, you're a long way then.
8 hours, yeah.
That's good.
We are. We're pretty north here. We're really 2 hours east of Reno.
So try and take me
if you can visualize that.
Try and take me step by step how you transitioned from doing on a small scale rehab, and then as I recall, that turned into a lot of funds really fast. And then how
Yes.
you ended up with the exotic animals.
Well, it was kind of a concurrent situation. You still had all the incoming animals for rehabilitation, and then we still started to get more and more of the permanent placement. I think from after our first bobcat, then we had calls for cougars, and then, believe it or not, foxes and different native wildlife that were also non-releasable, or in the instance of somebody trying to keep wildlife as a pet, totally habituating it, and then again it's non-releasable. And the transition itself was really difficult because my husband Dave decided to come out to the northern Nevada parcel and try to get the facility going on one end while I managed the other end back in Illinois, and so that was kind of difficult for a while. But this was all raw land. I mean, there were no structures. We built everything from, we have for example, we have a 30 by 84 foot building, and we did everything from the plumbing to the electric, and we built all the enclosures out here. So, it was really difficult initially, and I think on the average, I think I'm Vern. I think I'm your father, Vern, now. I think we're building 3 to 4 enclosures a year on the average. But yeah.
And did you
I think
guys
it's kind of funny, but
did you guys physically build all that stuff yourselves, or did you have to hire that done and manage work crews?
No, luckily my husband has a lot of skills, and I've unfortunately had to learn a lot of them myself. And so we have a tractor that we have all different types of specially made equipment that you can attach to the tractor that can lift your panels for the enclosures. We, everything from welders to whatever you need.
Oh my goodness.
So yes, we do everything. Yeah, concrete mixers, the whole thing. Yeah.
There is so
we jokingly
much
call it the Safe Haven Fitness Program.
You never needed any
Yes.
coaching to be fit, though, because I can remember back when you were here at the sanctuary, you'd be up at like the crack of dawn out there running, and I'm thinking, I just need coffee. How is this woman out there running already?
Well, now it's not running. Now it's building. So yeah, I do actually. I do. As hard as it is and as tiring as it is, yeah.
You got lots of space to run now.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. It's actually quite beautiful out here. There are cougars that live in the canyons behind the property, and bobcat, and so there's quite a bit of wildlife.
You know what surprised me? I had seen photographs of that area, I think back when you were building the cages, and I couldn't tell how beautiful it was until I saw some of your close portraits of the animals, and I'm going to bring some of those up here, and you can tell us about the animals. But it's like, it would look like it's just a field of golden grass, and yet when you look at it closely, there's flowers and there's all kinds of detail that you just didn't see at first. Let me see if I can, what am I doing here? I need to screen share my desktop. And can you see these pictures now of your animals?
I can't.
You can't.
Not yet.
I wonder what I'm doing wrong here then.
Well, you can blindly tell me who they are, and then I can describe them.
Maybe this is the one I want. Can you see them now? Little bobcat?
I just have a blank screen. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I can see that.
Tell me about her. Him, her.
Okay. That's Gidget. She is one of 3 bobcats that were orphaned last year in Arizona, and Southwest Rehab asked if we could take them. Unfortunately, the person that found them held on to them too long, and although was well intended, completely habituated them. So they were decided to, they were non-releasable. And so she's just playing a little bit there with some enrichment, some crime, paper with a scent sprayed on it. The 3 of them, male and 2 females, arrived together, and unfortunately they had to be housed in an interim enclosure because it was right before winter. And we just finished building them a 5,000 square foot enclosure, and they just got transitioned to their new place, which they're having a great time with. They have a 14-foot high climbing platform, multi-level climbing platform. And then we also, who's not pictured here, we also received a call to take a bobcat, a 2-year-old from Las Vegas that had escaped an apartment house and was confiscated by animal control. And then we slowly introduced Steele, his name is, in with the other group. So all 4 now share an enclosure.
And your enclosures are really huge. I love that about them. So how big is the space on this guy, for these guys?
For these guys, and it's difficult, of course, with a top, but it's 5,000 square feet, which is really nice. But, we do have the space to do it,
Well, they
and
surely
unfortunately
can.
out here, we kind of have to, they are. I mean, the one thing that I think we lack out here is we don't have trees. So we have to make up for that with doing multi-level platforms and shade platforms and a lot of furniture. And so, they do have a lot of enrichment.
I've seen your platforms. I don't think any of the photos that you sent me actually show those platforms, but they are massive structures that do provide a lot of shade.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate. This area is known for some of the top gold mines in the world, and they're very into trying to help out with any type of organization that's related to the environment or conservation, and several of them have really enjoyed working with Safe Haven, and it's been a huge benefit to us because they're, first of all, they're wonderful with grants as far as funding the material for the enclosures, but secondly, they have great volunteer groups that range from geologists to engineers with all types of building skills and welding skills, and they would do these great volunteer days, corporate volunteer days, and come out here. And I mean, we can literally get almost an entire enclosure, like 40 pipe and concrete in one day with their crews. And so that's been a huge help for us. And they're also the ones that are really good with constructing the multi-level heavy-duty platforms for the big cats.
You've really been challenged, I would think, with getting volunteers because of it being so remote. So these work groups sound like they've really done an awful lot to help take care of some of that initial stuff. How do you deal with your day-to-day type volunteering? Do you have people that drive 30 minutes to come out there, or how does that work?
No, we have interns, biology and zoology graduates from all over the country that come on site. They live on site here and do 6-month or longer internships Everybody is required to live on site. We provide free housing. We really give them a good deal. They get stipends, of course, and there's a vehicle if they need one, so they can go to town. They can go to Reno on their days off. And so the idea is that there's somebody here 24/7, and there's a group of us. Not just for a medical emergency, but our big fear out here are the wildfires. So we feel that somebody has to always be here.
The picture that I have up on the screen now, can you see the fox? Is that a fox?
Yes, that's Cheyenne. She's a red fox. Yes.
And I put this up here just because I thought.
And I'm sure.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know if you showed her horrible before picture, but she was one of our few red foxes that was non-releasable back from the Midwest. And she was orphaned when she was only about 1 month old. There it is, okay. And, without a mom to groom and take care of her, her mom was hit by a car and killed. She developed a horrible, horrible case of sarcoptic mange, and you can see in that picture, I think you can even see the eggs like towards the top of her head that weren't hatched yet. But
wow.
6 weeks in isolation, and yeah, and only a 40% chance of survival. She was in such bad shape. But 6 weeks in isolation, medicated baths, a lot of, of course, antibiotics and treatment for the mange, and retesting with skin scrapings, and finally she was in the clear here. But she did have some lingering health issues, which prevented her from being released. And she looks great. I think Cheyenne is now about 8 years old. Yeah, she's a pretty girl. And she shares the enclosure with Juno, who looks like an Arctic fox, but he's actually a red fox that was bred, unfortunately, for his white coloration. There's a coyote girl, I think. Oh, there's Juno. Okay, yeah, Juno's gorgeous, but he is essentially a red fox, and but the two of them get along really well, and of course, they're spayed and neutered, and they share a 5,000 square foot enclosure as well. Juno's about, I think Juno's only like 2 years older than Cheyenne.
We don't have to deal with animals who dig here at Big Cat Rescue. How do you deal with digging? Do foxes dig? I'm assuming like a dog they would.
Yeah. No, they're prolific diggers, and it's actually more of a challenge to construct their enclosure because you have to clear out everything on the ground and do fencing all the way throughout the enclosure and attach it to the walls, and then you have to bring dirt in to cover the fencing for about a foot of coverage there. But they could actually tunnel out in a night if you didn't do that. You have to have the entire fencing floor covered with screening.
Oh my goodness. Wow, that really adds to the complexity and the cost.
So yeah, really labor intensive to construct their enclosures. But they enjoy dirt. They enjoy tunneling and creating their own little places.
Who is this little cutie?
That is little Annabelle. We have 3 permanently placed coyotes with us, and that's her when she was orphaned. Unfortunately, they really dislike coyotes out here, so if they're not hit by a car, they're shot. We have 3 orphan females that we accepted through the Department of Wildlife, and unfortunately, here, every state is different with their laws as to what you can rehab and release, but Nevada does not permit you to rehabilitate and release coyotes, foxes, skunks, bats, and raccoons. So if you get an orphan in, it's euthanasia or permanent placement. So we agreed to take several, and we have Isabel, Annabelle, and Maribel that are permanently placed with us. And yes, the 3 girls. So yeah, but they're kind of difficult to work with. I mean, they even though they're spayed, a lot of times the females will fight. They won't get along, and we have unfortunately had to build all 3 separate enclosures to separate them.
That's how it's happened out here. We started out with 56 cats from the fur farm that all got along fine, and then somebody'd start fighting, and we had to build a new cage, and somebody else started fighting, we build a new cage, and now there's like 100 cages out here. So it happens no matter how much space you give them or how hard you try. They're solitary and don't want to spend time together. With cats anyway, I don't know.
Well, these guys are harder to work with, I think. Well, they're tougher to work with because they're very, very smart. They won't fall for a live trap. You know, when it's time to vaccinate, they seem to progress so far with operant conditioning, and then it's like, okay, no, I'm not going any further. I'm not going to do this anymore. And you take 3 giant steps backwards. And so I actually talked to someone at GFOS if they could recommend another organization that works with coyotes, because we seem to get so far with the operant conditioning, and then they, you know, like I said, they go backwards again, and so they're harder to manage. I think, you know, we have shifts and lockouts for the big cats. They, you know, enjoy eating in there. They get in there. It's easy, but these guys are without a doubt more of a challenge.
And were you able to locate anybody that works with coyotes? I don't know anybody.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I forget who it was off the top of my head. I just received an email, but I will follow up on it and see if, you know, they have some other suggestions with the, you know, the clicker training. We can get Isabel in a shift, but we can't get her in a carrier in the shift. That's like the end of how far she's willing to go. So yeah.
There's a fox here at the sanctuary that several years ago, they had something here called fox pinning. I don't know if they do that in Nevada, but they would turn foxes and coyotes loose in a big fenced-in area, and then hunters would train their dogs by turning them loose on the coyotes and foxes and letting them rip them to shreds, and they would bet on, you know, how fast the dogs could do that. Well, for the first time ever, we got more animal lovers than hunters in a meeting for the Florida Wildlife Commission, and they actually banned the practice finally after all these years. But what happened after they banned the practice is I think they must have brought all those foxes here and dumped them at Big Cat Rescue outside our gates, because we're just being inundated with these gigantic red foxes that are not native to Florida. And we cannot catch them for anything. They're just, like you said, they're so smart, and they won't go in a humane trap. And we've been just trying everything to our wits' end.
Yeah, no, they are difficult. They really are. But I don't know if they have that practice out here. You know, it's unfortunate. You know, there's tags on cougars, and they will tree them with packs of dogs and that type of thing, which is really not. You know, it's pretty awful. But but that practice, you know, exists out here. I don't know about the training, but I've never heard of that. That's absolutely horrible.
It really is. You mentioned GFAS, that's the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, and that is another area where you really built your sanctuary the right way, because I think it's so crucial to become accredited and to avail yourself of the resources by being able to reach out to a group of people and finding people that are the best in their field to help you with an issue like coyotes or foxes. Can you tell me how you decided to do that and what that process was like for you?
I had wanted to apply for verification with GFOS, but initially I just didn't think we were ready. We were so busy with building still, and, you know, all the requirements with regard to shift sizes and that type of thing. It's not hard to do. It's just that when you're still in the start, it takes a while till you can get there. You're still building 4 enclosures a year and just crashing by winter. So, you know, there was a lot that we had to get caught up on, and we did. And what I think what's really nice about GFOS is they come up with recommendations that maybe you wouldn't have thought of yourself. And so, like, for example, a policy to introduce a new keeper to, and, you know, that type of thing. And they're really great ideas, and they make you rethink a lot of how you did things and better ways to do it. And I think that's a real benefit.
I agree, and I think even though you had enough of a background in working with these animals, plus you'd already had one facility before you built the second facility, you know, you had an awful lot of that idea of how infrastructure should work. But for somebody that's just starting out with a sanctuary, it could just save you so many setbacks by being able to consult with people that have already done this before. So I think it's a tremendous resource to people that are thinking that they want to rescue animals, whether it be rehab animals or exotic animals, or I know they have horse sanctuaries and bird sanctuaries, all kinds of different sanctuarians involved.
Yeah, well, I think that's a benefit too, in that, you know, you can be presented with any type of animal, and you have no background necessarily in caring for that type of animal. So being able to reach out and say, okay, this just came in, I've never dealt with it, who can, help me, or at least get me to, can provide the interim care until it's transferred to a facility that can care for it. And we don't have a background in raptor rehab, but we get quite a few of them in here. We get eagles in here, and hawks and owls, and unfortunately there is no raptor rehab person in this area, so we literally will transfer 2.5 hours away from here just to make sure we get them to where they need to be. Or in the case of, you brought up fawns, we can't, even though we have a license for rehabilitative care here, and we have rehabilitated bear cubs and wild bobcats for release, fawns just won't make it in our predator environment now. So when you house all predators, you can't really raise a prey species unless it's way far away from the noise and the stress of what those animals can produce for the fawns. So again, we have to transfer.
Now that you have 300 acres, you might be able to build a facility on the other side.
That's true. That's true. That's a thought. Yeah. I don't know if we could ever find our help again, though.
Was that a one-time thing?
The distance,
Wow.
What's that?
When you said your one-time help, I'm not sure who you're talking about. The people that built the.
Oh, enclosure? No. I was kidding in that, if we expanded on that 320 acres, if we could ever locate the personnel anymore, because of the size. I was kidding. So.
Oh my gosh, yeah, there's a little bit of a delay, so it's kind of hard for me to tell. I know that you have done a lot with the universities. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with that and why you do that?
Sorry, Carole, which university?
I know that you had been involved with the universities. My earplug fell out, maybe that's why. I know you had been involved with some of the universities with, I'm assuming it was their veterinary training programs. So could you talk a little bit about how you got involved in that and why?
Well, mostly it was back in the Midwest. We worked with the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Veterinary Teaching Hospital, and that was a great experience because it brought in fantastic care for health checks on the animals, and yet they could bring a few graduate students not to work directly with the animals but to observe, and we would luckily have like 3 zoologists and veterinarians that would come out and do all the sedations and the blood draws and that type of thing. And so it was a really good benefit for Safe Haven. And then also they weren't that far away, and that type of care was available 24/7, and that was fantastic. Here we have more of a distance, though our veterinary clinic that works with us is also available 24/7. They will travel out here. They will bring all their equipment. They'll bring their anesthesia, oxygen crash carts, technicians, and so on. And we do have the ability to do some procedures on site, but then otherwise we'll transfer down there. One of our interns that stayed on for a full year was accepted into UC Davis for their veterinary program.
Nice. What is a typical day in your life?
Very, very busy, starting pretty early in the morning. We get up, and the first start of the day is, of course, animal care and AM meds and that type of thing. And then in the summertime when we're building the enclosures, actually we still are at this point in time doing construction. We'll do 3 hours of construction and then resume with the rest of the tasks of the day, whether it's food prep, whether it's feedings and cleaning and den cleaning and whatever else has to be done. But you do have to work around the heat in the summer to a degree as far as building out there in the hot sun. So we try to structure the day around putting in the hard hours first and then finishing up with everything throughout the day. It depends upon our weather here. We can continue with building, if we're lucky, all the way almost into November in some years. It depends, but if we don't have a lot of snow and extreme cold, I mean, we can still get out there and work on doing a new enclosure. In fact, we're doing one now.
And who are you planning for your new enclosure?
We were asked to accept a cougar through GFOS, and we have a smaller temporary, but with this weather, we can expand on that and finish that pretty fast, and so that's what we're doing.
And this cougar that is up on the page, hopefully he's up on the page, is Max. We were so delighted that you had called us to ask if we could, I think you were the one that had called us and asked if we could haul him out to you. You had space for him, which at the time nobody else had space for this poor cat. And we did not have space for him, but you did, and you didn't have anybody to go out and get him. So I think Jamie and Gail and maybe Honey picked him up in Texas and drove him out to Safe Haven, and that was where they got their first look at your facility and were mightily impressed by it. So I was really happy to see this picture of Max and see that he's doing so well.
He's a sweet cougar. He really is. I mean, for considering his history, he'll just come right up to the cage and purr, and he's just a very happy cat, and he's doing really well here. We were really glad we could take him.
Do you remember the backstory on him?
Sure. He, I think it was Insync Exotics that was working on trying to get the cat's place at the time, but it was a Texas pole barn, a private owner who had passed away from cancer, and I think, if I can remember, it was approximately, 9 cougars and 9 African lions and 1 tiger that had been housed in this pole barn, and they were only in horse stalls, and I believe Max was actually housed with another cougar in an individual stall, and I know that they had found bones of cougars or other animals that had passed away. Probably they felt that there were injuries from them being housed too close to other big cats that were able to reach through. I know that some never went outside, apparently, and so I don't know if Max was one of those cats, but initially I think it was Insync that asked us to take the other cat that had been housed with him, and the cat was so devastated after after they tried to transition him to another facility that he stopped eating for several days, and so of course they wouldn't transport, because it was too dangerous for the animal's health, but asked if we would take Max, and of course we agreed. And he is a sweet cat. He really is. I'm not sure of his age. We think he's between 12 and 14, just a guess. We're not 100% sure.
And for those who don't know, Insync Exotics is also verified by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, so it kind of shows how we try to work together. Whenever anybody calls us and asks if we can take an animal, if we don't have space, we immediately reach out to the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries and ask them, who do you know out there that may have space? But it's really a tough thing to do because we're all so full and overflowing.
Well, I think it's impressive, though, how the verified and accredited sanctuaries with GFOS collaborate to make the transportation work, because that's a huge aspect of the placements. We have the space and we can take the animal, but we don't necessarily have the ability to be gone for a week and a half with a smaller staff versus an organization that has larger staff that can remain behind. So the fact that they can make that transportation work is wonderful.
Have you used Loving Friends Transport yet?
No, but I'm writing it down.
They are just wonderful. They've got some transports for us, and they're here in Florida. But she called me a couple days ago, and she had come out and looked at our circus wagon, because that's really the biggest, heaviest duty thing that we have for moving lions and tigers back or forth around the property. And you just can't find those anywhere. And so she came out, took all kinds of pictures. This has probably been a year ago, of the one that we had, and then she is having it constructed exactly the way she wants it, and she said it's all done now, they were just painting it. And they already have fabulous trailers for doing this, because they were in the business of building those trailers. So they have like air conditioning, and they have CO2 monitors, and they have cameras in the back so you can watch what's going on with the animals the whole time. And then they have this big, huge thing that hauls them that they can actually live in, so they're fine being out on the road for a week at a time driving cross country. And they only charge us and other sanctuaries the actual cost of the gas and whatever, like if they blow out a tire or something, they don't charge anything for their time. They have been amazing, amazing people. They mostly do puppy mill type rescues, but they've started doing the big cats.
Hmm.
When
That's good to know because
yeah,
that is a
when the South Florida Wildlife Rehabilitation Center went under last month, they initially told us that they had 4 cougars, 2 leopards, a tiger, and a hybrid. And at the time, we only had space for the hybrid, and so we contacted Bill and Kiz, and I think they contacted you and said, "Hey, could you take this tiger?" And you had space for them, so we told them that you guys could take the tiger. They ended up placing the tiger here in Florida instead. But it's another example of how, through the networking of the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries and all of us who know each other through that um, organization, that it makes it so much easier to find placement for an animal.
yeah, no, it is a huge help. And I mean, you look at that situation back, what, in 2010 with Wild Animal Orphanage in Texas, and that was huge. That was like, I think, over 400 animals, and that's a lot of animals to try to find homes for.
It really was. And it took over a year to place all of those cats, and I think even longer than that to place the primates. I love this picture of these servals that you sent me at your facility.
That's a
And
great picture.
the thing I love the most is if you scan down here and you look at their fur, look at the shine on that fur. These guys are
Yeah, they
so
are
healthy.
beautiful.
Oh, whatever you're feeding them,
Yeah,
you're doing
that's
it right.
that was a family of that was a family of 5 that came from Colorado and were privately owned, and their owner took really good care of them. She did, but she became ill and was concerned about getting them placed, and she drove them all the way out with her family, and she was, for a private owner, she was really responsible. She does help contribute towards their care, and they have a 10,000 square foot enclosure with 2 heated dens and climbing platform and all kinds of furniture for enrichment, and they do really well. They're very shy, but you can tell they're best buddies. She had, yeah, I think she had bred the parents and produced 3, you know, uh, after that, so that's how she had the 5, and then she was, like I said, she was really good about. I asked her if she can get them spayed and neutered before bringing them out to Safe Haven, and she did, and but they're doing really well.
Well, that's good that she was able to do that and that she still contributes to their care. I think we've had one person in all the years that Big Cat Rescue's been here, and that'll be 21 years next month, just one person that has actually sent any kind of support for their cats after abandoning them. And that was only like $25 a year for a couple of years. We've never heard from her again.
Yeah, well, it's that, and I think what shocks me the most is that not only do most, of course, not contribute, but they never even pick up the phone to see how their animal's doing. That's amazing to me.
And these are the same people that would have been just jumping up and down and swearing how much they love their animals and how much we're taking their rights away from them by trying to pass laws that keep people from getting these animals as pets.
That's true.
Crazy. So who is this gorgeous tiger?
That's Gage, and Gage was rather one of the 2 that we accepted from an Ohio facility that was closing down due to lack of funding. He's housed with Cyber, and that's a beautiful picture. That was on the cover of Nevada Magazine for the July-August issue, and they were doing a story on Sanctuaries, which was really nice that they included us, and especially that they put him on the cover. It's brought some more recognition to Safe Haven for what we do. He's 14 now, and Cyber is 12, and
Cyber tiger.
they have a 10,000 square foot. Oh, I'm sorry?
Cyber tiger. That just cracks me up.
Cyber tiger, right? Yeah.
I'm sorry. They have
And
10,000.
that rescue was 10,000 square foot enclosure, and that was the collaboration with Ifan G. and Bobby Brink from Lions and Tigers and Bears. She was the facilitator, I believe, for the to find placement, and then she also helped transport those two guys out to Safe Haven, which was terrific. And I know she transported others from that facility that were going elsewhere for placement.
I know she's done a lot in Ohio because of their recent change in laws. A lot of the people that had these animals don't want to meet the new standards that are being required, and so they have just dumped them. Was this before that
Do you
happened?
think that's going to continue?
I do.
Yeah, this was 2 years ago. Yeah.
2011, I'm thinking, is when Zanesville happened. What is it, before or after Zanesville?
It was after Zanesville, and I believe it was, like, I'm guessing June, late June. So, let's see, 2012. Yeah, they arrived in late June in 2012.
I do think this is something that is going to continue to happen, but I think it's necessary that and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, we have a bill pending right now called the Big Cats and Public Safety Protection Act. If that bill passes, it will make it illegal for people to possess these animals or to allow public contact with them. And anyone who currently has a big cat would be able to keep the animal until they die, but they can't buy or breed more, which just adds to the problem. And so what a lot of the people who are in the industry and making money off of those animals are saying is that if this bill passes, then all of these animals are going to be displaced. And it's like, well, no, not unless you're some irresponsible person that's going to dump your animal as soon as you can't make money off of them. So there will be some of those out there for sure. But I think the vast majority of them will probably stay with their owners because most of them are in pet situations anyway. But I think it's really important that the bill pass, even though it may mean a temporary glut of animals seeking refuge, because at least the problem stops there. And what we tell our volunteers all the time is we can only take in 5 or 6 animals each year as our older cats pass away. But once this bill becomes law, then we know that the end is in sight and that, you know, all of those animals that are suffering in backyard cages are going to die out over the next 15 or 20 years. So we would be able to take in more animals once we knew we had fixed the problem. But it doesn't make sense to be taking in a whole bunch of animals and adding to our annual fundraising, which is like, what, $1.5 or $1.7 million a year just to take care of the animals we have. Doubling that doesn't make sense if we don't fix the problem first. So I do think there are going to be more of these animals that need a home, but I think more of us in the sanctuary industry will be able to take them because we'll know that the problem is being fixed. How do you feel about that? What do you think?
I agree, and it's interesting that you were just talking about that bill, in that Nevada just introduced a similar bill because Nevada previously had no ban on private exotic ownership, and I think what was happening were there were quite a few coming into Nevada with their tigers and acquiring more tigers and in people's backyards, and especially in southern Nevada, like around the Las Vegas, on the outskirts of the Las Vegas area. It seems to be more of an influx, and so they did introduce a bill that is very similar, where they can keep their existing animals, but they can't acquire more. And there was quite a lot of pushback on it. You know, I went to the public hearing, to testify on behalf of the bill, and
good for you.
There were quite a few people opposing it. Well, I tried. This is Nevada, Carole. It's a little bit different. I actually never got to actually testify. I had to submit it in writing because the previous hearing was on trapping rights, and that went on for about 7 hours. So by the time the exotic pet bill was coming into play, I mean, it was like 10 o'clock at night, I think. It was just ridiculous. And I mean, there were they were going into the trapping issues are also something that there's a lot of push back on, as far as, we are so different than other states where people don't check their traps for 24 hours at least, sometimes days. I mean, so it's, people were basically fighting the fact that, they weren't saying they couldn't trap, but that, it was cruel and inhumane the way they were doing it and not checking the traps, and also that they were putting traps like in the pathways where people's dogs could, have been injured in the traps. But jumping back to the bill for the exotic ownership, there are areas here where they do have them in backyards. They do walk them on leashes, and they do charge people to, interact with the cats and also to hold the leash and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So they needed to do that as well.
I think it's important that Nevada initiate such a state bill, because they are one of the last holdouts, kind of like the Wild Wild West, where people are allowed to do just about anything that they want to do. But the federal bill is what will make that work everywhere. And part of the response that we're hearing from especially Republican senators and congressmen, federal senators in Congress, is that they feel like this should be a state issue and not a federal issue. But the problem is you have so many different variations of state bills, from none at all to those like Florida, who say that they are one of the most strict states in the country when it comes to the regulations involving, how you cage the animal or how you allow contact and all of those kinds of things. And yet Florida leads the country in the number of killings, maulings, and escapes. So it tells you that the state laws are not handling this issue very well, and we really need a overarching government ban on the private possession of these animals as pets and props.
Yeah. Well, I agree, and I don't think you can have it that it's okay in one state and not okay in another. That hasn't worked, and it's not going to work.
No, they just, like you said, they just jump states and go from one to the other.
Yeah, they were jumping here.
Who is this gorgeous, gorgeous Canada lynx?
Oh yeah, that's Monkey. I don't know why he named him Monkey, but he is gorgeous, and he is 5 years old. He's from Minnesota, and he was privately owned, and his owner took really good care of him, but again, could no longer care for him. He lost his job, and actually, Carole, that's number 2 that still helps support the cat. That's sends donations in for Monkey, and Monkey was introduced to our 7-year-old spayed female lynx, Kiki, and so they share their enclosure now, and he's doing really well. He came in with the Chaucy too, that was his housemate there, but the Chaucy basically stays in our building. He's so domesticated. I think it's just too cruel to keep the Chaucy outside with lions and other cats making noises and stressing him all night, and he just he did better off indoors. But yeah, this guy is just absolutely beautiful.
How many times a year do you suppose you are asked to rescue hybrid cats?
Not very much, Carole. It's surprisingly, I don't think hybrids are something that exists around this part of the country as much as in other parts of the country. We, more likely receive requests for the big cats for placement, and also for bobcats. There seems to be quite a few placement requests for bobcats, and I think that's the one pet that's more popular out here versus the hybrid.
Are those bobcats primarily native bobcats, or are they, like from the pet trade? Well, I guess they're both
I'd say the pet trade. Yeah, most were privately owned. Yeah, no, privately owned and surrendered or confiscated.
Yeah, I wasn't clear in the type of question I was trying to ask. What I was trying to ask is, are these bobcats coming from the wild initially? Are they being, like nests raided and then people trying to make pets of them, or are these pets that are being sold across country?
No, being sold across the country.
Okay. Well, that's interesting, because we don't get that many bobcat calls. Servals are the ones that people call us all the time about. Servals and hybrid cats. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Someday somebody's going to start a serval rescue.
Well, jumping back to your bobcat question, though, they travel across the country and then they buy the kitten from a breeder and come back. So that's what they pretty much do as far as acquiring them.
Hmm. And what's the story on these guys?
Well, those are our boys, Ifa on the left and Kobu on the right, and maneless males neutered when they were, younger. And they originated from Wild Animal Orphanage in Texas, and you know that story. They were one of the over 400 animals that needed immediate homes because of the closure of the facility. And they do really well together. Ifa on the left, you can't see it from his picture, but actually, I should jump back. Both of them initiated from roadside zoos, two separate roadside zoos in the Midwest before they went to WAO. And Ifa on the left was housed too close to another animal that bit off, I'd say, 2/3 of his tail. Mm. And Kobu has that ataxia, the shakiness, who lacked a vitamin A. Had a vitamin A deficiency in his diet when he was a juvenile. So both are compromised to a degree. As you can see, they're best friends, and they do really well together. Because we have cold winters here, we do have, in addition to the dens being heated, we have heat lamps that are protected with metal shrouds and hex bolts with an outside switching system, so we can add heat to their dens and make sure that they're warm enough if we have, some of those really cold days.
It's so funny to me to see fluffy lions. We just don't see fluffy lions in Florida, but your pictures were so fluffy.
Yeah, they are.
Were these cats neutered at Wild Animal Orphanage before or after you got them?
I don't know. I don't know if they, I believe it was probably not when I had them, so it had to be at Wild Animal Orphanage.
The reason I'm asking is we have Cameron and Zebu. Cameron is a male lion and Zebu is a female tiger. And we gave him a vasectomy so that they wouldn't have kittens. And we also spayed her just to make doubly sure. But now in his old age, and I'm thinking he's like 13 years old, he's starting to get really possessive of her. And so what we were thinking is that we would just go ahead and neuter him and see if that would help with his aggressive behavior toward her, because it seems to be sexually related, which they keep because they keep the testosterone going when you do a vasectomy. So how have you had fully intact male lions before to compare this, or do you know how they compare?
Carole, I never have as of yet had fully intact males. And these two guys, by the way, are also 13.
Do they get along?
They get along really, really well. In fact, I don't think we would ever even consider introducing somebody to the mix there. But yeah, they're constantly grooming and snuggling together, and there's no fighting whatsoever.
Wow. Well, that's nice. Yeah, we've got a lot of people here who have been telling us, oh, no, you can't do it because he'll lose his mane and he won't be as beautiful. But I think it's a whole lot more important for the cats to be comfortable and get along with each other than to have that beautiful mane.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, you can see his tail here. You can see how little of it was left. And this is one of Ifa's favorite, happy moments here, where he rolls on his back and then he plays with his toes. And he looks like he's smiling.
He does. He looks like he's really having a great time. I love this picture.
And he does it pretty frequently.
We're down to like the last 10 minutes of the show, and it went by really fast, as it usually does. What kind of parting thoughts would you leave with anybody who's thinking about starting a sanctuary?
Go work at one for a long time. I mean, it's such an eye-opener as far as the demands for your funding, your finances, your infrastructure, and I think keeping your growth in check to where you're not taking in so many more animals than what you can afford. That's the obvious one. But your infrastructure is also a fortune. So I mean, if you can't grow if you don't have water or power or the space to build good sized enclosures to house them, and staff. I mean, there's just so many aspects of it. I think, working for another sanctuary is just a fantastic way to see what's really required to make that work.
I think that's really good advice. And do you still have an outside job, or is Dave still working outside of the sanctuary?
No, and I couldn't even imagine it. It's just so busy every single second of the day. Yeah, I mean, I really don't take days off hardly at all. Maybe I'll, if I go to Reno on errands, it's always combined with other meetings or appointments and other things. And so, I think that's the other aspect that people have to look at is the demand on your life. It really, you can't, I don't think, work another position and have your sanctuary grow successfully, yet you need the money, obviously, to sustain it. So it's there's a lot more to it than just, I can go ahead and rescue this and that. It's, the sustainability factor, it's critical.
I noticed on your website you have a lot of fundraisers, and I think that's an area of sanctuary work that most animal people are just not thinking about when they think, oh, I want to go rescue these animals. They're not thinking about the massive amount of money that you have to raise to take care of them, and how you have to learn how to throw huge parties and how to organize tournaments. And so can you tell us a little bit about some of the fundraising skills that you've learned and some of the stuff that you found works and what doesn't work?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Every different part of the country, I think, is different in what people like the most, that they'll be the most responsive to. And, back in the Midwest, we would do a golf outing, and that was like the event that everybody loved to attend. And here, it's around food. So, the dinner type of event. Yeah. So it's around the dinner type of event. And we started with Winnemucca's a small place, but our support from Winnemucca has really grown. And we just held our 6th annual fundraiser this past May, and we sold out to 320 people for the first time.
Wow.
So it's growing on it's growing on a fundraiser where it's not the same old thing, that you introduce something that makes it more exciting every year for people to come to. We probably have over 100 silent and live auction items, and so that's a pull for people to go for that. We have entertainment. We have we do a whole new video presentation that every year on what we've done as far as the progression of the sanctuary with projects, new rescues, a fun enrichment segment that's probably about a 40-minute video presentation, and people just love the video. So I mean, between all those factors, it's a really good event, but it's never enough in itself. So we're trying to also expand into the Reno area more, and Carson City, the capital, with other events. We just hosted a Just Desserts, which is a wine and dessert tasting event in an art gallery, which was really nice. And just other small events, a 5K race and run up into the canyons behind us, and other means of bringing in people that have different interests, that would also support your sanctuary.
Did you get to run in that?
I'm not, no. I'm too busy organizing. That one's coming up. That's on October 12th. Yes.
Okay. Wow.
So.
This has been so wonderful to catch up with you. It's another issue with running a sanctuary. You never get to catch up with the people you love. So you are one of the people I really love and admire, and I so appreciate you coming on to the show today.
Well, thank you. We love you too, and I look forward to seeing you at the conference. That's the first time in how many years? It's been a long time.
So are you going to be there then? That's wonderful.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. Just myself. But yeah, and I don't think I have something the Monday after, so I can't stay for the Sunday tour, but I'll be there for the Thursday, Friday, the workshops and the whole conference. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. Yeah.
I'll give you a big hug there. Since this is your first hangout, the way that you get out of the hangout is up at the top right-hand side of your screen. You'll see a little receiver that'll say exit, and when you touch that, it will make you go away. So. Thank you for joining us, and I'm going to hang up now as well.
Thank you for having me, Carole.
Bye.
Great, thank you. Bye. If I can